Hello, I am delighted to welcome to the podcast today Dilys Sylla, who I've known for, I guess, about a year now.
Yeah.
Very impressive woman. And I'm going to invite Dilys to just take a couple of minutes to introduce herself. Dilys, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. So my name is Dilys, that's true, and my surname is Sylla. I basically run a charity called Who'll Hear My Cry, and this charity raises awareness on rape, child abuse, and domestic violence. I also do motivational and public speaking and some life coaching. So my charity has been running for roughly about just over a year. It's quite a new charity. And I also have an NGO in Ghana as well, raising awareness on the same subject areas as well. So that's me.
Those are some pretty gnarly subject areas. I'm sure that you hear some really horrifying stories.
I do.
What inspired you to start your charity?
Well, about 3 years ago, I was running this online business called the Fit Chicks Club. And that was really about motivating and inspiring women of a certain age to be fit and healthy, but not necessarily buy into the idea of this perfect body. It was about making personal choices to improve one's health and lifestyle. So it wasn't about having the perfect body image, whatever that is, but just really celebrating little successes to make ourselves better health-wise. So through running the Fit Chicks Club, I did have quite a few women that would contact me and say, look, I've got, this issue, I was raped or I was sexually abused and, I'm so overweight. And I would often help them to see the correlation between their trauma and their poor relationship with food. So I was kind of introduced into the topic in the supportive role from that perspective. And then roughly about a year and a half ago, there was a case that broke out in Ghana of a media personality that was accused of raping a 19-year-old girl. And I was just so appalled. I'm originally from Ghana, but I was born and raised in England. But I was really appalled at the attitudes of the women in my community that were very so focused on blaming the victim. The attitude of the man didn't even come into it. It was like, what was she doing in his hotel room? These young girls nowadays, they're so rotten. And I just couldn't get my head around it. So at the time, I had decided that I was going to do some videos about just topical issues around the world and just, have normal discussions. But when this case came up, I chose rape as my first topic. So I gave some definitions on rape. And, the response was very positive, but the brother of the accused thought it was smart to send me some threatening messages, and other members of his family started to send me death threats. And, I went to the police. He was, called in and he was warned to stay away from me. And from that, a lot of other people came out with their stories. And I just didn't feel that I could stop. It was no longer, I'm just doing this one topic and then I move on to something, the next episode. I felt that these people needed a voice and they needed somebody that could actually explain understanding both cultures, i.e., being British and being Ghanaian, and being able to do that crossover to show them that, no, I do understand the culture because I am Ghanaian, but yes, I am westernized to a degree. And that's really how I got introduced into doing the whole charity on these topics.
So when you posted that first video, and I remember seeing it, it was powerful stuff. I mean, it's pretty explicit on a very, very difficult topic.
Yes.
Did you have any idea that it was going to provoke this kind of response from the accused family?
Not at all. I mean, I was really surprised because the Ghanaian community is quite small. And had they done a little bit of research, they would have been told she's not the one to threaten, because I don't do bullying in any way, shape or form. I don't do victim. And I was angry as well as, there were so many emotions going through, because I just felt, what if I wasn't supposedly as strong as I am? What if I didn't have strong family support? What if they were able to frighten me to the point where I recoiled within myself and didn't speak up? And I took things further, based on that, just to demonstrate that you don't allow anybody to affect how you live and to affect the choices that you make. So that's why I kind of put my foot down.
It sounds like that was really a strong matter of principle for you to highlight this case in the first place, but then also not to be, I suppose, subdued by their bullying attitude.
Yes, you're right. Because one of the things that I did say was that 19-year-old girl didn't have a voice, but I do, and I will use that voice, and I will not allow anybody to silence me. And at one point I got over 40 messages from one of their members of the family. I was told I was going to be buried. And I just thought the more they spoke, the more angry I became and the more determined I was that you will not bully me into not speaking up for people that are vulnerable or who don't have a voice or who care about what people think about them. So that was really, you're right, that's what really did push me.
Do you think you've always been that sort of principled, courageous person? And if so, where does that come from?
I've always had a problem with people being bullied or being taken advantage of. I've always had that. I will always be the one that will stand up and say that's not right. And funnily enough, when I was in school, I was bullied. But I was a bit of a weird child in as much that there was always something within my gut that made me believe that I was somebody. But at the same time, things happen to you in life that kind of dilute that self-message. So in school, I was never the child that was invited to anybody's house for a play date. I was never invited to anyone's birthday parties. But there was still that voice in me that you are somebody and you are special. So I kind of have a natural, I'm drawn to people that are made to feel that way because it's so wrong and it's such a life-changing way of thinking. So I think, yes, I have been courageous to a degree, but as I said, life throws things at you that destabilizes you, and courage is a journey. It's not a stationary position. You have to keep evolving in that spirit of courage, and I think that's kind of what's happened to me to a degree.
Is that a conscious process for you, that evolution of your courage? And how do you do that?
I think yes and no. I think there's times where you're thrown into situations where you don't have a choice. There are too many things riding on your shoulders and too many people relying on you that the decision is taken out of your hands. And you need to just suck it up and you need to dig deep and you need to just go on with it. Because, for example, as I said, the way this whole charity started, there were too many people relying on me. How could I have shut down that communication and that contact and say, well, I'm done now. I've got my however many thousands of views on my video. Goodbye. I'm going on to the next topic. I couldn't do that. And, the weirdest thing is things like sexual abuse and rape, I've always shied away from. Not because I don't care, but I'm very emotional. And it's something that disturbed me greatly. I remember some years back, because I do some contract work for the local authorities. And it's normally within the area of complaints, so customer services kind of work. And I got a call to apply for a head of children's social services complaints. And I remember saying to the agency, don't ever call me about any work like that because I want to be able to sleep at night. And those were my exact words. Now, fast forward 6-7 years, look at what I'm doing now. So it is quite strange that sometimes you don't even know what you have within you or what your giftings are to take you on that journey that's not really for your benefit. This isn't for me. This is for other people.
That's such... I don't want to allow you actually to downplay your own courage because you always do have a choice. You could have just said, this is too intense for me.
True.
Too emotional. I don't think I can hack this. But it sounds like that righteous anger has been quite a fuel to your fire.
Yeah, very much so. But when I say I didn't have a choice, I felt that I only have to, and I said this to somebody the other day, I only have to hear these stories. I haven't had to live them. So if those women or whoever has been through that trauma, who am I to say, oh, it's just too much for me? That's too self-centered. It's not about me. Because if somebody doesn't stand up for these people, well, who will? It's never about the next person. It's always about you. It's always about what are you doing? And that's just how I felt that I had a responsibility. I couldn't turn a blind eye. These are issues that affect us, directly or indirectly. There is always somebody that is close to us that has experienced either being raped or being abused or has gone through domestic violence. I've found that since going into this field, the amount of disclosures, I've had personal friends that have said to me, I've never told anybody before that I was raped, or I've never told a soul that I was a victim, of sexual abuse. So for me, when somebody sees something in you that allows them to release a secret that they have never told before, which obviously has had a really negative impact on their life for the mere fact they've had to keep that secret, it shifts from being about you to being about them. And I think that's what's helped me to kind of toughen up as well.
So it is like this courage muscle that becomes stronger the more you use it.
Yes.
And apart from the Ghanaian celebrity and his family, what kind of response do you tend to get from people? Because these are such difficult subjects and still very much taboo. As you just said, it's often hidden. People just don't want to talk about it. So when you're there and you're being very explicit and very vocal about these topics, what sort of reactions do you get?
I would say 90% of the reactions, or even 95%, are very positive. Because again, especially within the Ghanaian community, I am very much speaking on behalf of women that wouldn't dare disclose publicly that they've been abused because of the tradition and the culture and this attitude of no one, no one wanting anyone to know their business. So it has been positive, largely, where people contact me privately and sometimes very publicly and say, God bless you for what you're doing. We're praying for you. We stand behind you. We support you. And then you have the 5% who are absolutely clueless on what rape and sexual abuse is, on what sexual exploitation is, on what the grooming process is. So there's so much victim blaming when these situations come up. And I think 2 days ago, I posted something on my Facebook. I did a video because I was just so incensed to read a story about a 5-year-old girl that had been sexually abused. I said it was her uncle, actually it was her cousin. Not that it makes much difference. But the story, and a lot of stories in Ghana, are reported in a way that I think needs to change, because the focus is so much on the victim, but not in my opinion, in a supportive way. For example, in Ghana, we don't have the term sexual abuse, it's defilement. And, I've been very, clear about why I have a problem with that word, because by mere definition, to defile means to make dirty or unclean. And I don't see why any child should be told that they are dirty or they are unclean because of the actions of somebody else. So that's something that I'm looking into to have that changed. And also how stories on these issues are reported. One of the examples that I use is that this child, and other stories where the description is they had sex. No, they did not have sex. They were raped and they were abused, because sex gives a connotation that there is some semblance of cooperation or consent. And it does take off, the focus of how horrific the experience was if you don't use those words. So I would say that, largely the response has been very, very good and has been immensely supportive. But I'm still dealing with men that will come on my page and say, well, the parents need to raise their children right and the women need to dress appropriately, which I have just ripped, that nonsensical argument to shreds, using men who have been raped as an example. I said, well, how provocatively were they dressed? And, there was a 19-year-old woman that I, reported on that was raped. She was in her bed. How provocatively was she dressed? What about girls in school? That there is, I believe it's Plan UK are running a campaign on raising awareness on girls that are subjected to sexual assault and other forms of sexual violence in school by teachers. They're in their school uniform. How provocative do they look? So it's a real nonsensical argument. And I challenge some of these men that I don't want to hear hypothetics of why another man is justified in raping somebody based on what they wear. I want you to stand up, be a man and man up and tell me that you would rape another woman because you felt her skirt was too short. Until that point, I don't want to hear it. And it has been deathly silent.
I'd really like to invite our listeners to check out Dilys's videos because she pulls no punches. They are amazing.
Thank you.
Just for a moment to take a step back and think about your life as a whole. So this might be to do with the charity or not, but what do you think is the scariest thing that you've ever done? The thing that subjectively you felt the most afraid to do?
Gosh, that's a really good question because, and I know it sounds really weird, I can't think of anything that I'm actually afraid of, to be really honest. But then I think maybe the reason for that is, as a Christian, that's my faith. I draw a lot of strength and confidence from my faith. And when I feel uncertainty or fear, I pray. And that's what gives me the courage to be bold and to broaden my shoulders and say, I can do this. And there's a passage in the Bible that says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So that's my mantra. So there is nothing that I cannot do through Christ. And that's, everybody has, their belief systems. And that's mine. And that's why people say to me, well, you're so strong. And I'm like, no, I'm not really. I have a secret weapon that I use to give me that strength that people don't realize. So it's difficult for me to take the glory in as much as, I am able to draw just within my own natural capabilities to do the things that I do. So it's a very difficult question for me to answer, to be honest. I need to think about that one.
Well, it's a fantastic answer because I think a lot of people who are judged to be courageous, they do feel a connection to some higher purpose and hence to some, I suppose, somebody who issued that calling in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that way.
Yeah. And so when we feel called to do something, we sort of feel like we're not going into bat on our own.
That's right.
We wouldn't have been called to do that thing if we weren't, as the sort of like the quid pro quo is that we do get a bit of extra moral support.
I think so. And there's another phrase in the Bible that says that he who has called you will equip you. So, and I don't think people appreciate how wonderful the Bible is because people have gone on hearsay that, it's an ancient book and it's just a list of do's and don'ts. It really isn't. And even if you are somebody that's not a Christian, there are so many words of encouragement and empowerment that really does allow you to be able to face life on a day-to-day basis, I'm
curious about something else too, because in my experience, sorry, this isn't really a question, it's what would come. Like our own individual ego becomes less important when we feel like we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. So if we do feel afraid or if we feel criticized around what we're doing, as you were saying earlier, it's not really about us. It's about that. It's about everybody.
Yeah.
Does that resonate?
Absolutely. That's why, I mentioned about responsibility. There are other people that are depending on us. Not everybody is like you and I, but we have found our courage, irrespective of where that courage has come from. And we've made a stance and we've made it clear. And we've asked people to come on board and to think, outside of their comfort zone, to make certain decisions to affect change. Not everybody can do that. What we try and do is try and make people see that they also can do that in their own way. And I remember I went for an interview for something and we were talking about personalities and how we instill value and how we motivate our teams. And I said, my personality type thinks I'm very open. I love people. I love to talk. So I would walk into my office because I managed a contact center of about 100 and something people, and I had quite a few managers. And I would walk in the morning and I would go down the middle of the aisle and I would wave on each side and say, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you today? That's just me. But when I was doing some, coaching and some training, and, I'd had some complaints from some of the junior staff on how their managers didn't engage with them and et cetera, I said, look, you have to appreciate that everybody is different and their style of communication is different. I said, my way is no better than that person that will come into the office and go round to people individually and greet them and say, good morning, how are you? It's just appreciating our differences and understanding that that's what makes us unique. How awful if everybody came in and said, good morning, good morning, good morning. You know, it's just us appreciating that we have different ways of doing things. And for those that can't be that loud voice or, you know, be that tough, that we just support them and let them know that there's still a value and that their contribution is still very, very, very important.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, likewise, there could be different kinds of courage. There can be a more being a front person for a cause kind of courage, and there can be a quieter kind of courage as well. I'd like to invite you just put on your coaching hat for a moment. And if you had a client who came to you and said, look, there's this cause that I really care about, but, you know, who am I to take this on? I don't think I've got the courage to really step up on this issue. And you could tell that they really wanted to do this thing, but maybe their inner critic was giving them a hard time about it. What would you say to them?
I would ask them their reasons for wanting to support that cause. And then I would ask them to explain why they felt it was important. And from those answers, I would hopefully lead them to a place to see how crucial it was that that desire was able to translate into action for the very people that they want to help. So I think that's how I would approach it, that just the fact that that seed is within you, your actions is what is going to grow that seed for it to bear fruit. But that whole process is something that at each stage you are adding value to that cause, and that the very fact that you have a heart for it in itself is a plus for whatever it is that you want to do, and is an affirmation and confirmation that you have the right to do what you wish to do in regards to supporting whatever cause it is.
So it's interesting that you mentioned action there, that you sometimes need to just kind of get out there, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes.
And it's through the taking the action that you start to create the sort of positive feedback loop into your own courage.
Yes. Yes, because it's dangerous when you don't do anything. You procrastinate, you become frustrated. And it's really interesting because the lady that I was that I did a mini coaching session for was in floods of tears because she didn't feel that she was being appreciated at work, and she wasn't being appreciated at work. And what she said, which was quite profound, because I think a lot of us think this way, but we just don't articulate it. And she said, can't they see how hard I'm working? I work so hard and I'm good at my job. And I said, I'll call her Sue. I said, Sue, it's nobody else's job to see how wonderful you are. That's your job. That's your responsibility. And I said, the only reason why you're feeling so despondent is because you have made it somebody else's responsibility. You have to take control of realizing and telling yourself, well, actually, yes, I am very good. And if I'm not being appreciated here, what steps do I need to take to be able to be appreciated elsewhere? And, you know, cut a long story short, what she really wanted to do was go back to university. So I asked her, you know, what are the barriers in that not happening? She sat there and she goes, actually, there aren't any. So I said, well, in 2 days' time, I want you to come back and tell me what you've done. And those tears, I mean, gosh, she went through quite a bit of tissue, I'll be honest. She was really, really, really upset. And I said to her, but you've come to that decision. I didn't do anything. You've realized that actually I do have a say in what happens and in the opinion that I have of myself, and blanking out, you know, everybody else's opinion. So
that's such an annoyingly female thing to do, isn't it? To sit there quietly doing a really good, solid job and waiting for our prince to come and give us a promotion.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know why we do that.
I mean, you know, as much as people think that, you know, I'm so strong and what have you, until very recently, you know, on the contracts that I've worked on, I've been treated quite disgracefully, really, really badly, to the point where it's caused me anxiety. It has made me ill. And I've gone through a lot, over the last 2 years, because obviously I have the contract to be able to support the work that I do. And I have gone through hell. But my last contract, everything was going absolutely fine. I loved the work I was doing. And there was a change in management temporarily. And this guy, came on board, and he was absolutely awful. And my sister called it professional jealousy, which I just think is such a fantastic term. And that really is what was going on. I would do work, he would try and steal it and claim it as his own. And he was meddling in my work to the point where it was becoming almost impossible to do it. And I called him, and the second time it happened, I called him into a room, and I am so proud of myself that I said to him, I will not give you permission to undermine me or disrespect me. I said, in order for you to do that, I have to give you permission, and I do not give you permission to do that. We were in that room for about an hour and a half, and I was not leaving until that message was communicated to him, to the point where he had nowhere else to run. And sometimes being courageous may cost you your job. But you know what? For the first time in 10 years I've been contracting for nearly 20 years, but for the first time in God knows how many years, I stood up for myself and didn't count the cost. And I am so proud that I allowed myself to speak up for myself and not just take what was dished out. And, eventually I heard through the grapevine that he said, oh, I'm a very difficult person to manage. And I said, no, I'm a difficult person to control. There is a difference.
Good for you. That is such an inspiring story, because I think a lot of us, again, maybe particularly women, find it very difficult to have those tough conversations and to really stand in our truth and even spend that hour and a half, not just to sort of say, this isn't okay, and sort of then run away, but to actually tough it out, to hang on in there.
I think unluckily for him, it was, I mentioned 10 years because in 10 years is when the experiences have been quite negative on occasion, but on the occasions they have been really tough. It's had a very tough impact on me and my family. And I think I used him as a point of contact for every single person that had bullied me, that had vilified me, that had besmirched my name.
I thought, quite sorry for him now.
I just thought, I'm not having it. But I was very professional. I was very, very articulate, and I was very clear. And I just didn't give him anywhere to run. And I think at the point at which I said, I will not give you permission to disrespect me, he was quite stunned, because I realized that obviously nobody had ever spoken to him like that before. And he was a bully, but he was your typical passive aggressive. On the outside, very nice, but you could just see, he was awful, to be quite honest. And I just thought, I'm not doing victim. No way, not this time.
And it's interesting, isn't it, how that ties back to your charity work as well, because those sex crimes are an attempt to control, aren't they?
That's correct, absolutely. It is about power and control.
Well, it's really interesting as well how often people are complicit in, and I'm not. They.
I know. I think I know what you're. I know exactly what you're saying. I get you.
Because we, obviously there are crimes where physical strength is used to, impose something. But sometimes, like in your professional situation, we allow ourselves to be controlled.
Yeah.
When we don't have to agree to do that, we could actually say, this is not okay with me. I run my life, you don't.
Yeah.
And these power games that people play, it's quite interesting how you just see that manifested in so many different ways and contexts around the world. I wonder what the world would look like if there wasn't this sort of, is it so embedded in human nature, this desire to control, or sometimes a desire to be controlled? I wonder what the world would look like if we were all like these wonderful, well-balanced, autonomous.
But you hit the nail on the head. I think the issue, or the common denominator between those that are controlled and those that want to do the controlling. The underlying factor, or the common denominator for me, is insecurity. And when people don't have their confidence build up to know that they are enough on their own, they find different things to validate, or different things to validate them. And that manifests in all sorts of different scenarios and all sorts of different ways. But you see, confidence in yourself is what will allow you to make those decisions. For me, I felt, because of financial reasons in the past, I've had to take being treated so poorly, because I'm like, well, as of now, I can't afford to lose my job. This time, I thought, I don't care about the cost, because whatever happens, I will not die, and I will not be shamed through poverty. Again, going back to my faith, and where the Bible talks about God being your provider. And I remember, the last contract, well, not the last contract, but a contract that I had a little while ago that ended very, very badly. And I was treated terribly. I mean, at the end of it, I was having panic attacks. I couldn't sleep. And it was very hard on me and hard on my family. And, financially, things were very tight. And I remember, when you get to that point where you don't even want to open the post, because you know that you just don't want to see what it is. And this is just to, again, going back to my faith, is to speak of God's goodness to me. There was, where I live, there's it's a trustee group that actually looks after the grounds. It's run by a charity, but there was some issues going on there. And there was a meeting for all the residents to attend and vote on some of the issues. So I was looking for my voting card. Had a few pieces of mail that I hadn't opened. And, my husband and I, we opened each other's mail, and I thought, oh, that looks like something from the bank. So I opened it, and it was a cheque for just under £12,000, PPI payment. I literally fell to the floor, and I thought, thank you, Lord, because this was, and it helped me for the next challenge, because it made me see that no matter what happens, there will be sufficient provision for me, no matter what. So yes, that contract ended before it should have done. But I didn't really care, because I thought, for once, I had my dignity intact. I didn't leave broken, you know, and every time I've left broken, because the end result has been the same, but the process and in how I've gotten there, I have been completely destroyed in the process. And I thought, not this time. Not this time. Yeah.
So fortune really does favour the bold.
It really does. It really, in this case, it did.
Just before we wrap up, any final thoughts on courage, particularly for women, that you'd like to share with our listeners? Or have we said it all?
Yeah. I think that, very quickly, I think that we have to understand, as I said, that courage isn't a final destination in itself, because you're going to face different challenges in different circumstances at different stages. And at each point, there's different forms of courage that you're going to need to draw on to be able to get to that particular destination and walk through that particular journey. So I think for us women, we need to be a bit kinder to ourselves and set goals that are achievable. For me, as much as I've done other things and I speak to people about self-confidence and what have you, just being empowered to vocalize to an employer, you are not allowed to do this to me, was great for me. Who knows what I'm going to face tomorrow, but at least it's something that I can look back on. Even speaking to you, it fills me with a sense of pride that that's a hurdle that I jumped. And I think that we need to celebrate the successes that we have in terms of demonstrating our courage, no matter how small, because there is nothing like small courage. What may be tiny to me may be a huge thing, for you. And I think that we need to just understand that we need to be kinder to ourselves and celebrate the, in quotes, small successes.
Yeah, that's a fantastic message. Yeah, really nurture that little plant and
absolutely
grow. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Dilys. Just as a final thing, can you tell us where to find you online?
Okay, so if you're looking for me on Facebook, my name does appear as Dilys Sylla, which is Dilys, and the surname is Sylla, S for sugar, Illah. My charity website is www.H for Harry, M for Mother, C for Charlie, .org.uk. So, and it stands for Who Will Hear My Cry. I'm also on Twitter, I think as www.hearmycry. And we're having a launch of the charity on the 8th of October this year in Bishopsgate, Gibson Hall. So the details of that will be on the website, will be on Twitter and Facebook. And yes, whoever you are, feel free to inbox me privately for a chat.
Amazing. Keep up the fantastic work, Dilys.
Thank you. And you too,
great inspiration.
Thank you.